Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to episode 15 of the Night Castle. I am your host, Demetrius Montero, with my co host,
Matthew Feldman. How y'all doing?
and we are the sports writers for the UCF Roundtable covering UCF athletics, primarily basketball and football. And today we're going to kind of bring you a season in review for men's basketball and touch a little bit on spring football that is around the corner. But of course, we'll start with basketball first because that season recently just ended. We know the Knights booked their ticket to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2019, ending a 6-year drought. And they were defeated early in the first round against the UCLA Bruins. The Knights were a 10 seed, and the Bruins were the 7 seed. And it was, according to Dawkins, Coach Johnny Dawkins, it was a great game to him. When I was watching the game and did the recap slash gamer whatever, um, it felt very much like a hump the Knights couldn't um climb over because once UCLA got up, they were up at, I think the largest lead was like 14 points. Um, the Knights just couldn't get over that hump. They got close. They got close. Thanks to Jordan Burks nailing 5 threes in the second half. They were able to get close. They were able to get close for sure. Get it to 3 points twice throughout the second half, but the Bruins offense was too much to handle. Eric Daly Jr. and Sky Clark did a lot of the scoring in the first half. And then some other guys showed up for UCLA in the second half. Donovan Dent, I forgot the other guy's name, his first name, but his last name Perry. But Perry showed up for them as well, and it was very crucial when they needed it. And so UCF season ends early. They did not get to the second round as they did the first go round. But regardless of a first round exit, the Knights still had a really good season. It was historic for them. We have non-conference dominance, conference improvement, although they finished with a 500 record. It is much better than the 14 and 24 combined record they had over the past 2 seasons since joining the Big 12. So overall, they still had a really good season. And we're kind of gonna just go over some of the highlights, the lowlights, everything that makes the Knights' journey to the NCAA tournament what it is. So, Matthew, what are some of your thoughts on UCF men's basketball season?
Yeah, definitely a disappointing end. Didn't get as far as the team would have liked, but making March Madness was already kind of out of the cards going into the season, especially in most of the experts' minds. We had a top or a bottom three NIL budget among Big 12 teams. I think it was nearly like $4 million, which is half of what AJ Dybonsa got paid by himself. So considering that we not only beat AJ Dybonsa, also made it to the tournament on that budget and being picked to finish bottom three in the Big 12, definitely a success. The loss in the first round doesn't take away from that. I think that was probably the best 7 seed in the tournament. UCLA, they were top 15 to start the year in the AP poll. They have guys that can play at the next level. You mentioned Eric Daly. He's actually my old boss's son. So I played against him when he was on IMG. So I've known him forever. But Donovan Dent, that kid's a real point guard. We actually kept him pretty well in check scoring wise, but you could tell when he's out there, their offense just flows differently. He's kind of like Themis for us. He sets the table, he runs the offense, and it was tough. And despite us falling into that early hole, as you mentioned, which was kind of the Knights' Achilles heel towards the end of the season, they just had really slow starts against Cincinnati. We were able to claw out, but against better teams like UCLA, it's not easy to do that. These are experienced players. Dent is a senior. Daly, I think he's a senior now. So they've been in situations like this before. They've played on big stages. So it was difficult not to get that done, but we had a chance, and we also shot 5 of 16 from the free throw line. So make half of those 11 missed free throws, you're either tied or winning the game. So it sucks that we couldn't get it done, but it's encouraging that the team was able to do that with the limited resources and time that they had to gel together. And I think going forward, that will have a big impact on not only retaining talent, but bringing in guys that want to play for Dawkins now that they've seen that he can get you to the tournament, to the big dance with very limited resources and very limited returning talent. Jordan Burks is one guy you mentioned, 22 points, 6 threes. He kept us in that game. He's probably the biggest target for Dawkins to get back next year. Following the game, he gave some encouraging remarks where he talked about, how big the coaching staff was to helping him break out this year. He had averaged less than 6 points per game last year at Georgetown. He jumped up to 13 this year. He was our third leading scorer, probably our top 3-point shooting guy, catch and shoot. So he would be a huge get for Dawkins coming back next year. Stillwell as well. Stillwell has a little bit of uncertainty right now surrounding his eligibility, but with the new JUCO rules, he spent 2 years in JUCO, so he may be able to get another year back. I think those guys would love to come back. I last season was a little different. Guys had better opportunities, like Keyshawn moving on to Auburn. Like, you can't really blame them for taking the money, but once you've seen and once you've been a part of UCF making the big dance and all the special moments that they had together, I think that encourages them to run it back next year. And if you can bring back Burks and Stillwell as a start, that is already way more than Dawkins had to work with last offseason. So I think it's encouraging that we made it that far. We also have Arturo Dean, who committed back in December from Oklahoma State. He's lying in wait, ready to replace Fulks at that point guard position. They're very similar players, to be honest. He led the country in steals 2 seasons ago at FIU. He averaged over 3.3 steals per game, which is ridiculous. And then his lone year at Oklahoma State, he was still over like 2.5 steals coming off the bench. So right off the bat, we'll have a point guard that can play defense, set the table, kind of like Fulks did this past year. And if we could get Burks and Stillwell back along with some other guys, I think we'll be able to, put ourselves in a position to make it back next year.
Yeah, I think now that you mentioned that, I do think that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest takeaway from the season overall in general is you do have some guys who have the potential to return, and you're not just dealing with a fresh, clean slate like Dawkins did at the beginning of the year, where now he's getting, 11, 12 transfers, and he has to make sure they all gel together and make sure everything fits. You're dealing with all of that. The media is predicting your bottom three Big 12 team, and I guess you could say UCF in a way overachieved.
Oh, yeah.
Um, you perform at least to UCF standards well in the Big 12. It is a far cry improvement from the last 2 seasons. You go dancing, you do that with limited talent, limited NIL resources. So it really speaks a lot to the coaching staff and how they're able to bring everyone together despite not everyone knowing each other that well. Maybe some of them know each other through, the AAU circuits back in the day and all of that extra jazz. Maybe some of them have played against each other, but not in terms of I'm spending every day with this guy on the court. It's not like Themis and Jamichael Stillwell, who both came from Milwaukee last season. But being able to retain some guys that you took to the tournament with you this year will be a massive improvement with Dawkins, because everyone either graduated or left for better opportunities last season.
Right.
So now if you're able to keep Burks, he's immediately one, if not the focal point on the offensive end, because he scored 13 points. He averaged 13 points throughout the season. You mentioned Arturo Dean. I think that's another little takeaway as well. Like, you just have a guy you slot right into Folks' spot,
Right.
and you may not have to go find someone out there in the transfer portal. I don't know what Dawkins is targeting, what kind of archetypes or play styles he wants when the transfer portal opens, but whenever the portal opens, we will keep track of that. I did that with football when the transfer portal was open those 2 weeks of January, and I'll know who Dawkins is targeting and who's planning to visit UCF and all of that extra jazz. And speaking of that, I think UCF making the tournament, you do have a little bit of eyes on you, so you may get some transfer portal love.
Definitely.
So I think it's good to have a lot of returning scorers from this year's squad coming to next year's squad if that happens. Especially if Jamichael Stillwell gets an additional year. You keep some of that toughness. So you're probably looking, you're gonna have John Bull next year. Well, this is all if they're returning, right?
Right.
So
Hopefully it doesn't pull a
hopefully.
no
But
charm.
oh man, no chomp situation, please. We don't need another we don't need another chomp situation. But I think the future for UCF basketball honestly looks very promising. The seniors who did leave because of eligibility or graduation, I think they put UCF on the map just a little bit, just slightly. They left some of their mark on there, especially Devin Cambridge, who ended his college career tied for third in all-time games played.
Yeah.
So shout out Unc. Um, don't know what he's doing after this, but shout out Unc.
Yeah. Hey,
Um,
that's an experience, that's for sure.
yeah, that's some real experience right there, man.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much call it for UCF men's basketball season until the transfer portal opens and we get a gist of who's interested in coming, who Dawkins is targeting, and go over new additions if the Knights do add some new players. When that time comes around, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But now we're gonna transition over to spring football, which is right around the corner. And I'm sure the people do want to know what UCF football is going to look like, what to expect, because I think UCF has gotten a lot of love from the media in terms of some of the guys they got, Alonzo Barnett the third, Duke Watson, Landon Chambers. I think the media has recognized some of those guys as a really good addition for the Knights. And when you have that kind of recognition, I start pouring over, some expectations start getting put on the team. So, spring football is an early preview of what could happen for next season. It's not the craziest in depth preview, but you at least get a glimpse of how the team is gelling, or, who could be the starting running back, who's
Right.
going to be the lead receiver, et cetera, et cetera. You kind of get some of those inklings from spring football. So, Matthew, what are some of who are some of your key players to
Yeah.
watch for in spring football? And yeah,
Well, I think that Frost and Mossbrucker, they had a pretty clear vision what they were looking to do. It seems that they went with a lot of mid-major studs, guys that showed out at the lower level compared to maybe in the past when we've gone after guys that have been at the Power Five level but are looking for a new move, kind of like Taven in the past, KJ Jefferson, kind of the same situation. But this year, we even at the quarterback position, we went and got a guy from a mid-major. You mentioned Alonzo Barnett, who is a proven winner. He took James Madison to the college football playoff last year. Played against Oregon. They dropped over 30 points. Barnett looked great. He's a dual threat. We've talked about his abilities before, but Coach Frost just keeps talking about how great of a leader he is and how he can tell a difference in the guys walking around the facility. So there's just as you mentioned, the media sees it. There's just a different air, it seems, around this year's football team. This is kind of the first time that Frost has had a full reign of his full control of his team, if you will, since returning. So I'm looking forward to it. But you mentioned the running back battle. I think that's going to be the biggest thing that we learn from spring football. Who's getting those first team snaps? Because you mentioned Landon Chambers and Duke Watson. They're both can play. Duke has been limited last season, but as a freshman, he led the country in yards per carry. He has breakaway speed. He can also catch it a little bit in the passing game, which is huge for UCF running backs. We always like to implement them in the pass game. And then Landon Chambers, another mid-major guy. I think he's from Arkansas State or one of those, Central Arkansas, somewhere in there. But he's another guy who's proven production at the lower level. And we've seen a lot of those guys that come up from lower levels and, kind of shock the country. We had Cole Kozlowski last year, who spent his first 3 seasons at Colgate and then jumped up to UCF for his senior year and made an all Big 12 team. So, it's a lot of these guys that are looking for opportunities, they just need the chance. And I think getting Chambers and Watson is huge. We're a big running back school. We usually rely on our run game a lot. We've had the liberty of having RJ Harvey for 4 years, and then obviously Miles Montgomery, who was solid last year as well. But these two, they're going to have their work cut out for them. We don't have many returning players in that backfield, if not at all. So one of those guys is going to be running back one when the season tips off, and I'm looking forward to see how that kind of shakes out. But you talked about expectations. I just think we have to start building towards consistent success. There's no, even with basketball, and I don't mean to go backwards, but like a win here, a loss there, a win here, a loss there. You're not gonna gain any momentum, one, and you're not gonna gain any real traction as a team that can compete in the conference, especially a Big 12 conference that is now dealing with Texas Tech, who seemingly has the highest payroll in the country. Last year they spent 20-something million on their team. I've already heard that they're breaking the bank again. So, there's team BYU, same thing. Those two are going to be powerhouses for years to come. So, and we know UCF doesn't have necessarily the budget that those teams do, but they do have the pull. Living in Florida is a benefit. The in Florida state recruiting is a benefit. We got Tyron Horns, who's a top 20 receiver in the class. He's from Booker. He's very close to my hometown, actually. But, being able to have that pull in state, especially with all the talent that's in Florida, is big. I think that we will continue to see players like Rocco Marriott, other, higher level star talents that continue to try to get their way to UCF because they see that something's being built here. And, Frost is established. He's done it before. I just think it's encouraging to see that he kind of did it his way, and that he's confident in what he's built. But I'm really looking forward to that running back battle. I think one of those guys is going to have a huge year.
Yeah, I do agree. I would say for me, I'm probably looking at the receiving core because although Dylan Wade had a historic season for a tight end, you still need a really go-to guy that isn't just your tight end. Like Dylan Wade can't be UCF's Travis Kelce, right? It's great to have a Travis Kelce, but you still need like a number one or a number two guy who can break off a cornerback and really get you some really good big plays. And so you're looking at an ascension of Wade and Charles. Wade and Charles was, I think, one of the few underclassmen who got legit snaps throughout the
Mhm.
course of the season. And so now he's jumped up, he's elevated. Can you be a number two? Can you be a number one? Can you be, a quarterback's favorite target? Like Dwayne Thomas Jr., he's coming back as well. So can those two pair up together to be a really good, dangerous wide receiver duo? Because the one struggle UCF had last season was definitely the deep pass game. Didn't really get much going in the deep game. And Steve Cooper, the offensive coordinator, he talked about that a couple times in the weekly press conferences, just being able to get the deep ball going. Because when you're able to get the deep ball going, you have Alonzo Barnett the third who could throw the ball, but he could also run it, and you have a good running back duo in Duke Watson, Landon Chambers. Who knows if some of the lower classmen running backs get a chance to get some of those snaps, the Tavion twins, the Adjumina etc. See if any of those guys could really make their impact on the field, whether it's running or being in the passing game, something like that. And it's just opening up your offense even more. So I think if Dwayne Thomas Jr., Wade and Charles, if those two can mesh together as a 1 and 2, and then you have some of the transfer receivers. I think you have Jonathan Bibbs and then Josh Derry. So
Mm,
how are those guys fit in as well? Because again, those are guys who are, mid-major. They made really good impact at their schools at the lower levels. So now they're jumping up to play, in a Power Four conference. How is that going to transition over? Because UCF's defense last year, I think they did a good job. I think the Knights did a good job. Alex Grinch led the defense pretty well. You had consistent top five, top seven pass defense. Um, so I think I can keep the same expectations with the defense where they're going to, I'm not gonna say lock down a team, but definitely make scoring tough for the
mm,
opposing team. Like you're not gonna get, consistent 8, 9 minute drives, right? We're gonna make you have a couple three and outs. What really matters is the offense. There was way too many times last season when the offense was just three and out, 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 and the defense just got tired. So you're looking at the wide receivers to be some of those big play guys and give Alonza the time to either make a really big throw down the middle or down the sideline, or just be able to break the defense and allow Alonza to run because the field is so spread open. So
right.
I'm looking to see how the receivers are doing, and a little bit on the background. I do want to see how the new guys, the new freshmen, are performing well in spring camp, because this is Alonzo's lone year in Orlando. Once next season is up, he's gone. So Rocco Marriott, are you going to be able to step up next season? Maybe if UCF is blowing a team out non-conference, like North Carolina A&T last season, they won 68-7. Hey, can you come in for, a couple drives and let's see what you can give us out there. Definitely got to see how the young guys perform in spring football as well, because Frost is trying to build a culture where he's developing his young guys. You get a guy, you have him for 3, 4 years, and by that third to fourth year, they put themselves on the map like Alonzo did with JMU in years 3 and 4 with them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at and expecting from in spring football.
Yeah. I
But
mean, can I
oh,
just add
there
one
you go.
more thing?
There you go.
I just think like this is the first year since probably my freshman year with John Rice Plumlee that we had an established quarterback. Like especially last season, the quarterback carousel, even the season before that. With even when we got KJ Jefferson, it was supposed to be that bona fide QB1. Too many guys play quarterback, and Scott Frost has said in the past, if you have three quarterbacks, you have none, because there's no way for a quarterback to get a rhythm if he's playing one game, sitting the next. And we saw a lot of that last year. Taven, when he went down, wasn't the same when he came back. And Cam Fancher, the same thing. He earned that QB1 role, got hurt in the first quarter, and then the one time that we saw him in action as a starter against Cincinnati, our offense was stagnant, and he just didn't look very comfortable. So getting a guy in there early that we know is our quarterback one, and we can roll into spring with him as our quarterback one, I think is a big, big, luxury for a team that in the past 3 years hasn't had that quarterback one, that established guy. I think KJ lasted 3 games. I think he was the first non-conference, and then they benched him for conference. So, Alonzo should be our quarterback all season, and I don't see him being benched. God forbid an injury, but having him there and having a 4-star lying in wait, as you mentioned, Marriott, who has connections to JMU. He was committed there before, so I'm sure he knows Barnett from his past commitment. I think that's big going forward, and I think it's going to be a better year. I think that we will finally get back to bowl contention, and Frost will start trending us back in the right direction that he had us in 2017. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am too. And with that, we'll bring the end of episode 15 of the Night Castle. I'm your host, Demetrius Montero, with my co-host.
Matthew Feldman.
And as I mentioned earlier, we are the UCF sports writers for the UCF Roundtable. And as always, every content creator has to do this. How to find it? Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that bell to turn on notifications for whenever we drop a new episode. You guys are able to watch it and when it's released, because you have to. But yeah, make sure you just like, subscribe, comment, interact with us. Because news is kind of gonna get dry a little bit. Summer's coming up soon. Basketball's over. Transfer portal is gonna open up in a bit, so it's gonna be not a lot of crazy super duper content, but still be able to tap in with us and see what we think and interact with us and all of that extra jazz. And as always, plus that top left corner, if you are watching on a device that is not your phone, so your computer, your TV, your iPad, pull out your phone, go to camera, hit the QR code, and sign up to be a part of the UCF Roundtable, where we post stories every day. So you'll be able to read our stories, comment on them, interact with us, and make community posts. So if there's any fun fact you see about UCF, like, I don't know, um, what's a fun
Like the
UCF
Taco
fact?
Fall celebrity game.
Yeah, like the Taco Fall celebrity game, or um, I just saw this like 5 minutes ago. Not 5 minutes ago, but you know what I'm saying. Mike Krzyzek, a former UCF head coach, his son posted on Twitter, vote for my dad to be a part of the UCF Hall of Fame, right?
Mm,
So maybe little tidbits like that. You find that and you post it on the community post, like, oh, former UCF head coach could be in the UCF Hall of Fame.
mhm.
Something like that, always to interact with interact with the community and interact with us. We kind of build a bond and really make this a family. So that'll bring the end to episode 15 of the Night Castle. And we hope you have a good day. And we will see you in the next episode. Peace.
Yeah.